Hey everyone, welcome to We the Trust. On this podcast, we talk about the issues that plague the lives of men, from sonship to fatherhood, fitness to finance, emotions to spiritual formation. We push the boundaries that make most men uncomfortable. My name is Mario Casada, a pastor, mindset coach, and brand strategist living in Honolulu, Hawaii, and I am joined by Eric Chang, an entrepreneur, fitness coach, and author living in Arcadia, California. Welcome to Season 2. All right, we are back. It's been a little hiatus. I had COVID and things just kind of went sideways for a little bit, but we're back. We the Trust. This is episode 11, I believe, of season 2. Super excited to have my pastor and friend, TJ Gorum here. And we're going to be talking about being a son today. And so TJ has had a really interesting story that I want him to share. You're from Ohio?
I'm from Oregon. So
Oregon.
as you can tell, Mario and I, we know each other really deep at this point.
I knew it was an O.
Oregon. They're all the same. All those places.
What part of Oregon are you from, TJ?
Right outside of Portland.
North side of Portland?
Outside Portland. So it's called Hillsboro. So
okay.
You been up there?
Oh, dude, my friend owns he used to own a CrossFit gym. I don't know. So he owned a gym in Beaverton as well as Hillsboro.
Oh, no way. What was the box?
It was called CrossFit Reflection. CrossFit Reflection Hillsboro. But he sold, I think, during COVID.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know exactly where it is. That's like right outside of Portland. It's like 15, 20 minutes west, I think, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
that's right, dude.
There you go.
There we go. Yeah.
There we go. That's awesome.
Geography lessons from Mario. Yeah. So, as you can tell, TJ has dabbled in a little CrossFit. Look at it; he's buff. He's showing some muscles there.
Here we go.
But COVID
the
has
black shirt. That's the black. The guys that aren't buff wear black shirts. That's how this works.
That's me right here all day.
Oh, weird.
Oh man.
And he's pastors a church now called Encounter out in Hawaii. And TJ, would you just give us a little bit more of like a thorough intro on you and?
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in Oregon, but kind of grew up kind of all over the West Coast. My dad kind of like got these like wild ideas. Like we moved like 8 times in 2 years, state to state kind of thing. So anyways, my roots are in, I call Oregon home. But then as soon as I graduated, I kind of had like a little bit of like a gap year, community college year, and felt really compelled to come out to like Hawaii. But everyone's like, oh, that must be rough. But for me, like I couldn't even swim when I moved here. Like I'm not a water guy. So it was like this like really, really like clear thing of like, you're supposed to go here, like to the point of like, I got this random check in the mail from my dad, who I hadn't seen in actually like years, because he qualified for disability and there's old child support payments and they got transferred to the state. So long story short, I like walk out to the mailbox with like a check for like 14 grand from the state, which was like the exact amount I needed to be out here. So it's just been like this wild adventure. So anyways, come to Hawaii, don't know a single person here. Within a year, plant a church with a bunch of guys that would end up changing my life, and the church just exploded. So it's just been like one adventure after another. So I've been out here for 20 years next year. So this will be 19 in August. Which is wild. 20 years, dude.
How old are you?
Isn't that crazy? I'm 38.
Wow.
So, weird, huh?
Wow.
So I'm like, everyone's like, wait, how old are you? I know you're bald, but like,
I thought you were much younger, but
see, I like you. Eric is like, this is how you build somebody. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
I would have guessed early 30s, like 30 maybe. That's why I was like 20 years. That doesn't make any sense.
Totally. I look old, acting mature. It gets confusing. So you're like, how's this work? It's good on there. So yeah, that's kind of the journey in there. So I've been part of like multiple church plants and building people and stuff over in like, lived in India for a while in an orphanage, made about 13 trips over there, kind of like building different stuff with different So it's been a wild ride. Like I would have never looked back like, oh, you're gonna like do this, and you kind of look in reflection like, whoa. It's like some people plan their life out. This was not my plan. And so it's been great, but it's been just like, well, I guess like you feel like you've lived like 5 lifetimes. I'm like, yep, I feel that. So
yeah. You mentioned a little bit of just obviously just very briefly about your dad and moving and child support and kind of like just random tidbits. Before I go into that, I'd love for you to share your God story. Like you mentioned that it was definitely a God thing to kind of pull you out into Hawaii. Give us a little bit of background on like your relationship with the Lord.
Yeah, so I didn't grow up in a church home, anything of that nature. So actually, kind of just grew up, just like I told you a little bit moving, but like in the last move, we moved from Nevada to Oregon. And my dad, so my mom and my dad got married. My mom got pregnant, and then I was kind of like in the wedding that whole kind of bit. So she's kind of just living life and doing that. My dad in the same way. And then my dad, when he moved us the last time, she didn't know this, but he actually ended up having bipolar. So he's bipolar, manic depressive, and would have actually like temporary breaks with reality. So pretty gnarly in the sense even that like, when we moved to Oregon, within a month, he actually had like a really big episode, and he actually like tried to kidnap me. And so he ended up leaving our family. Like one night he was going to go drive and like see professional sports. Like you're going to go see a professional sports team that's in Oregon. All we have is the Trailblazers. But it was like baseball or something. So he ended up driving all the way to California on that night. Yeah. That's like super professional. So everything else is, normal, but he drove down, ran a couple people off the road, almost killed them, went to court, got thrown, was going to go to jail, but got through, like, pled temporary insanity because of the manic depression. So anyways, I was going to end up being in the car with him the whole time. So it's like pretty wild. So all of a sudden you have my mom, she's got 2 kids. She's in a state that she knows really nobody, that's like a city. And there was a neighbor that we call in Hawaii, like Hanai, just adopted us, took us under her wing. And she actually just ended up bringing us to church. And like, it changed my whole family lineage and direction. So it's like one of these like wild things where it's like an all-time low for my family. And yet at the all-time low, there's like life that's birthed in a way that's like, I don't know where I'd be if that didn't happen. So it's kind of one of those weird things you look back, like this was a disaster and yet the best thing that could have happened to me. So just like growing up in that, like, I was part of like a little church that was like, our youth group was like 7 people. And then it just blew up to just hundreds and hundreds. And like, I could see like just God do like miracles. Like I remember like we went on a trip to Mexico City and I was like 16 and I'm down there and like we're praying for people. And it was wild. I never seen anything like it. Like people would come up and it was like as clear as day, God like would speak to me in a way, which I didn't understand this at all, but like this person's here. They're not here for her. She's here for her husband who has this. And they translate and be like, oh, she doesn't want prayer for herself. It's for her husband who has. And like, we prayed for like 35 people to be healed that morning, and like 31 out of 35 got healed. Like some like they couldn't like walk. So it's like, it was so intense, dude. Yeah. So you like, at the end of that, you're like, I don't know how to even like think about this, but like after you experience something like that, how could you ever go back to anything else? It's like, I made this commitment of like, I'm going to serve this God like this the rest of my life, because there's just, it was so intense and so wild. And it was like watching people's lives changed everything. So all that to say, my God story was like and this is going to be a theme actually I'm thinking about in my life. It's like a lot of disaster, and then he just brings life out of disaster. And that's just kind of like the pattern in there. So that was, for me, God became very, very real. It wasn't because my family grew up Christian. It wasn't because it was cultural or convenient. It was like real moments where people really were the church and God showing up with just power. And then from there, just being like, I don't know how I could do anything else. I can't see it.
I love the visual of, life out of despair. It's like in the Bible, there's the verse where I actually have a friend whose name is Ekundayo, which in Swahili means I think it means beauty from ashes, or it means, so it's like he's got, and he's not like Christian at all, but he's got this name that means what God does. And it's so powerful. And
that's
just
cool.
that idea of, God is in despair. He's in there, and in order to bring beauty from it. And it's just that powerful image. As I kind of alluded to earlier, like this is about being a son. And I'd love for you to go into, as much as you feel comfortable, but just your idea of what being a son was as you grew from having your dad in your life, however that was, however tumultuous that was, to not having your dad in your life. And I want to get to that point of identity and sonship, and where that journey took you, even in the midst of, especially in the midst of what God did in those moments as well.
Sure. Yeah, the whole sonship thing for me, like a lot of guys will talk about this, and like it's their jam, kind of like an overflow. For me, it's been a real complicated journey. So it's not like it's something that you can get intellectually, but like I don't know, just for me, like I already said a little bit, but like just story's so chaotic that like it just pick up weird things along the way. You get pissed off about things. It just there's a lot of like stuff that goes in there. So. Like I said, my dad dug out early, so I don't have a lot of memories young, except he would kind of come in and out in different seasons. So like my flow with my dad would be like, he abandoned his family and he never got over it. It left him in chains for the rest of his life, And so it was really sad because, it was really sad for me because at the end, like my dad already passed away like a couple of years back. But at that point, like I had been totally free and healed from this whole thing, but like it was weird because he just never got free, and it broke my heart. You know what I mean? Because it's like, Dad, I'm not pissed about this anymore. I mean, I was pissed about this, but like it's just wild now. So, anyways, he dug out early, and then I kind of just like we were in Oregon on our own, and then I kind of like was the only guy, just a couple girls in the house, and so. Kind of had this like on my own mentality for like a while, just because of like necessity of life. Like we moved 8 times state to state. I like had to learn how to make friends on the regular and then get ripped from a friend group. And so it just this like, don't feel super stable, have a people kind of thing, kind of going in that. And like, not that there's anything like blaming anybody for that, but just the reality of life. So that happens for a while. And then what starts to kind of shift and change gears is he'd come back in, and then he's got a really strong personality. So everybody in our family is strong. Just like they're like and on his side, they're all like wild creatives. So I'm actually, it's like my grandpa, he was a jazz drummer, and he grew up, he'd like play with like Miles Davis and stuff. And then my grandpa tried to kick Miles Davis out because he didn't think he was good enough. And like they do like rent raising parties in different hotels and to pay for rent for the month and jam this thing. And they're just like hustling and starting businesses and all. So it's just like big personalities. So my dad would roll in and he would like kind of like really insert his personality and try to do like this vicarious live through me thing. So like I wanted to play drums. We were so poor, I couldn't afford it. He's like, hey, pops back in for a season. I'll pay for everything. But if I'm going to pay for it, you got to play sax, because sax was his jam. You know what I mean? Like, that's what he always wanted to do. And so I had no options. So I'm like, okay, well, then I guess I'll play sax. So I do it for like a month and I freaking hate it, man. You know what I mean? So then I quit it. But then I have the same strength in me. So it's like, we kind of like would butt heads in that. So I have a little sister that's about 20 months younger. It just came to a head even like, I remember one time he calls back in, and I must have been like 12 or 13. And like school was easy for me, but I didn't get good grades. If that makes any sense, because I just did whatever, kind of like goof off public school, whatever. And I remember I'm on the phone with my dad and my sister got stellar grades. And he just goes through this whole thing of like, oh man, he like sent up these envelopes and he gave her like just hundreds of dollars and me like nothing kind of thing, and made us open it simultaneously. And he just kind of used it as a weapon. He's like, hey, this is what a good kid is. And this is what a good kid does. And like, I'm like 12, 13, right? And so like, I remember like, I just have tears coming down my eyes, but it's not like sad tears. They're like hot tears, if you know what I'm talking about. And those hot tears are like seared in my person of like, I don't need you. I don't need anything this. Like, I'm on my own. I can take care of myself at this point. And I'm like, I'm not going to let anybody get to this place that can do this level of damage kind of stuff. So I grew up like that. But at the same time, I had this wild stuff where like within the church, there would be all these guys that would like hanai me or adopt me. And like, they really did treat me like a son. And so I had these like incredible mentors. And it was this dichotomy that was really, really, really interesting. So there's huge wounds and also God providing in wild ways. But then these guys over here, what would happen is like one guy like would take me every week. Like we'd go do great stuff, go to a baseball game, do this. I mean, just absolutely amazing. And then he was single at the time. Then he got married, and then she had kids. And then it was like, they just kind of dropped you out of the equation. So I had this like pattern that just kind of kept repeating, where it's like, hey, somebody would pour in like, in a way that a lot of people would dream of, and then they would bounce. And so it's like, I always just got this kind of like little complex in there. So you think of sonship, how this equates to it. Like my dad was trying to like go in there. It's like, hey, if you perform well, if you do this, then you're loved. And this is what good is. And then for me it's like, you're always going to be dropped second tier no matter what happens in there. And so it's like, I understood sonship, but I never had sonship, where it's like all these other guys that would come in and come out. Like, it's like, okay, we will love you, but you're not blood, so you're out. And then your own blood is like, if you don't perform good enough, you're out. So it just felt like this space of like a tension. So that translated to God, that translated to life. Even church to a certain extent that deals with you like this. Like if you have skill and talent, people really love you. You know what I mean? And kind of like go down that. But if you like screw up or do anything dumb, then you're out. It's just like this, like just everywhere. So it's just like a poison, Wow. There's one guy in particular that like took me under his wing for like 6 to 8 years. I mean, I would like be at his house every week, and this is all my high school days. And I remember it culminated. It was actually the guy that like I went on trips with Dell stuff, but it culminated in this whole thing where it ended up because he was one of the main leaders that like led in a way, and like the church blew up and everything was good. But on the side, he had this like hidden affair. But at 18, all the pastors and everybody was like, you need to be the one to confront him. So like I confront him, and bro, he put me on blast in front of everybody. And we've talked since then. So this is all healed up. Just like he put me on blast in front of everybody in a way that was just like crazy. Wow. And so like, just like, so this is like your spiritual father now. And it's like, like I remember he put me on blast in front of everybody because we were in a trip. And then he just like, I asked him about it, and he's like, do you know this? Do you know this? You don't know that. And I just felt so much shame, right? Because this is in front of people, and he's like 20 years older than that. I remember looking at the ground, and then like the nail in the coffin was when he said to me, he said, and when you talk to me, you look at me when you're talking to me, Oh,
wow.
And so I looked at him, and I was like, all I know is that everything you've ever taught me, you're not doing. That's all I know. And then we talked for days, and then everybody was like, you're rebellious or this or that. So I just let all these like gnarly things go, And again, everybody has their funk. I've had seasons where I made radical mistakes in my life, and I've done damage to people, and then people have done damage to me. It's like the state of a fallen human thing. But all that to say is a backdrop. When it came to sonship, it was a really confusing thing because you have what everybody talks about, and then you have what my reality is. And so for some guys, they grow up and the dad thinks like, awesome. Like my dad was always there. Yeah, he wasn't perfect and everything else. And like my dad was never there, and I've always been on my own. And then you have this stuff of like God, no matter what. And then church oftentimes can be equated for that. And then there's that whole bit where it's just kind of like you're going to get cast to the side. And it's like, unless you're like primary in that. So it kind of came into this radical conflict. So it came into like adulthood in there. It's like the things that I carried is just like love is earned, like no matter what you say in there, it's like there's a direct proportion to how you carry yourself, how you treat people, how much value you can add. And if you can add value, then they'll love you. But if anything, not like humanity's very self-serving is what it felt like. And then his people felt the same way. And I don't think it's anybody's heart. That's the thing. It's like, I never felt like you have bad hearts towards me, but it's just the reality of what it is. And I'm like an ultra realist, if that makes sense. So that was like my whole, and like, yeah.
Do you feel like that formed you into someone that becomes a performer, where it's like, oh, like I need to become this way to be liked or to be accepted? Is that a reality or something you struggle with?
It was for a long time. So, but I think it was at like a subconscious level. And here's what's weird about it is that like that kind of thing acts as like fuel for like if we were like an engine, but it's a toxic fuel, but it can actually make the engine run in a direction that seems very life-giving. So I was like a super high achiever, and it wasn't because I don't think I was ever like, I need to do this so people love me. Like I didn't feel that.
Yeah, no.
But it was more like this dark 100%. Kind of like that was the core of it. I just didn't know that. And so for me, it's like my greatest desire was to be loved in that. And then I just like, the more I did this, the more love came. But it was just like, so that thing, like I was walled off emotionally for like 10 years, dude. And I could just like crush stuff because and I thought emotions are a waste of time, a waste of space, you know?
Wow.
Like, I don't understand this. Like I can deal with any hard reality and be honest about it. I'm not going to lie to myself, but like, you want me to feel this whole thing? Like this is ridiculous, you know?
So it kind of, so, I mean, it subconsciously pushed you into this direction of, you know, let me like ultra serve people. Let me ultra, just like, let me just get all this stuff done in the name of like doing good. In the name of excellence, but then maybe subconsciously it's like, oh, maybe I want to be liked, or maybe this is how I derive value for myself.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, it's just the like I'll just give you the thing where God started to break some of this. I remember I was going through some stuff like some funk, and I ended up going to counseling, and counseling's super legit. Like the whole stigma in counseling is so dumb because it's like it's like, why wouldn't you want somebody who's really skilled to ask you questions to help you go to like, it's like for sports. It's like, oh, dude, don't ever get a coach for sports because that means you're weak. And it's like the best coaches in the world make the best athletes. You know what I'm saying? Like,
is there still
it's just so dumb.
Maybe I'm living in such a bubble now that I don't realize, but like, I'm just so open to it. And everyone I know that I push in that direction. So I don't realize, is that still a thing?
I think for guys, it's totally a thing, especially when it comes as you get older. So if you're in church circles, it's a little bit more because it's like church circles have more like the value for soft skills and EQ and different things. But in other spaces, it's like, it's a dog eat dog world. And so it's like, yeah, it can be helpful like that, but it's just, you can just suck it up and make it through. So I think those things for guys specifically, and I think sometimes too, in my experience working with people, like the girls will push counseling on like their spouses or things in like a major way. And so it just feels this like loss of identity. I need help. Like it's just, it's wrong, but it's totally, I don't know.
Yeah.
In my world, it's still around.
I understand that. Like I have a lot of guy friends where it's like their spouse or their significant other pushes them into it. And then it's like, it's almost like, okay, so you want me to go to like emotions jail, you know, so you can like, or like you want to put me like
emotion boot camp.
Yeah, exactly. Emotional boot camp. So that like, because you think there's something wrong with me, and then now like, they're coming into it for like a twofold wrong reason.
Write this down.
Right. And like, the first one is like, oh, I have to
walling all these things up.
Yeah, right? It's like the first one is like, yeah, exactly. I'm coming to this because like you think something's wrong with me, so I'm taking that into it already. And the second part is like, oh, like I have to talk to someone about this. It's like, dude, nobody will understand. Like, it's like there's all these there's all these layers of walls now that exist coming into it. So it's like, oh, well, I really hope this person's really good on the other side.
Totally.
You know? Yeah.
So,
totally. Yeah. So go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, yeah. So just one thing I want to add on a breaking point for me then. So it's like the way that it manifested for me wasn't like I was trying to do super good for people, but like I wanted to like really do good for God, if that made sense. Mm-hmm. And so like I would be the guy, like if I made mistakes, I would just blast myself so hard. Like no one had to correct me. I would just like, it was super high on my own self. And so I remember like I was in a Starbucks, it was in a place called Iea here in Hawaii. And like, there's Romans 5:8 that said like, and while we were still yet sinners, that Christ died for us or showed us his love, he died for us. And it was like the Holy Spirit whispered in my ear. It's like the scripture literally means like when you were your absolute worst towards him, he showed you the greatest love he could have ever showed. And it was like the Holy Spirit dropped and was just like, there's literally nothing that you can do to ever make me love you more.
Wow.
Like literally there's,
wow.
Bro, I was like crying like just baby. And then people must have thought I was off my rocker kind of. This is in public, but it was just like in that moment, it's like, that's the stuff that started surfacing where it's like, I just felt like you do good. He loves you. You don't do good.
Wow.
Then I want to get back to a place where I do even better.
Wow.
So that's what I mean, where it was like, it wasn't like a pleasing people thing. It wasn't like that. It's just like, that was my operating system.
Yeah.
My heart was for him in there. I just couldn't get through that.
I don't know if this is like a Holy Spirit moment, but I really feel like you're ministering to me right now. I'm just like really receiving this and hearing a lot. I hear so many similarities between your upbringing. You probably knew this earlier. Yeah, we have a lot of overlap.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, I'm writing a book on it behind me right here. And it's like
it's good placement. I'll put that book right here.
Here we go. I got book questions for you after. Since I actually think I'm actually like the first thing I thought when we jumped on this call. Well, obviously, the listeners can't see it, but I'm like coveting your bookshelf, dude. It looks beautiful. I like it.
Oh, I'm in my buddy's office, so don't be. It's a facade, bro. Don't be fooled.
It's a facade.
I was like, Mario's on like a cool vibe, so I'm like, okay, I need something. I just like blank wall, totally fine. So.
Something I feel like the Spirit is speaking to me right now is you were just saying how like you're doing all these things for God. And it's funny because I feel like I've been in those places where I feel like, oh, I'm doing this because like I feel like I always felt like for the last 10 years, I'm doing this business for God, right? And I think when I went through COVID, I had a moment where I paused because I was about to lose everything. And I realized how much all this meant so much to me. And I even called Mario like crying like a couple times. And in those moments, I felt like what God was saying to me was like, wow, look at your ego. Like, it's almost a word of like, oh, you think like I need you? I don't need you to do any of this. And it's like so sobering because like as it's funny because what the paradigm that you're sharing about you almost trying to earn your father's love. That's like, it's such a real story for me. It's like, the reality is I tried everything that I did for so many years was me trying to prove that, look, like I'm good enough. And you know what, even though you weren't there, I figured it out. Or like, I have value.
Totally.
Like, I'm worth loving, even though you didn't love me or you didn't show me that you love me. Look at all the stuff that I can achieve because I'm a worthy person. I'm worthy of being loved. And it's like, dude, how disgusting or how huge is my ego in those moments where I need to prove that to myself. And God just can slow us down and be like, dude, I can do this all without you anyway. And
totally,
I don't know. It's like, such like, I feel like when you were like all that I shared just hit me in that moment right now, when you were sharing how you were like in the coffee shop or
that's cool, man.
And man, I was just like, it made me really think about, I just had this like, it's like I had a Minority Report loop. You've seen that movie? It's looped through like my entire life. And I was like thinking about it and I was like, man, like, yeah, all those moments were just ego. It's just of me thinking of me trying to prove myself or making myself bigger than I am. Because at the end of the day, like it's already done. Like he's gonna do what he's gonna do. And maybe we get to play a role in it. We get to be a part of it and feel some of that. But really, like he doesn't need us to do anything. He just needs us to be his son, I don't know. That was just
totally,
really man. Right now.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think when you're dealing with sonship, that's part of it too, is it's like, I was in a space in that sometimes like if you're doing things for God, like in order to get something from God, that's not sonship. That's sonship is when you like don't need to do anything for him to get something from him, but because you have something already from him, then from him you can now go and do something. Dude, so it's just like flip, right? But like the tricky part for this whole thing is it's like it's not an information, it's a revelation that you need.
100%.
And that's what's so hard because you can't time revelation. You can't go through a thing. You like it's like you said, the Holy Spirit like has got to literally bring this to like your heart's eyes for like a mind loop or whatever to like break it. Because other than that, it's like we're stuck, and each one of us are stuck in different ways.
Yeah.
And you think the way you do, you live the way you do for a reason, because it makes sense. Like I had to survive and kind of go through that. And you had your stuff where it's like, you know, like you were not there, and like now I can like stand up and still do it. Like part of the ways you had to prove yourself. You know what I mean? Like otherwise the opposite of that was like, you're going to get crushed and you're going to just be absolutely overrun. So like it existed for a reason. Yeah. It's just, I think like the best analogy I ever heard, this is a guy I worked for. He was this huge car dude, and he like tried to prove for his dad, like his dad was an even bigger car guy. So he bought this like nice Corvette or something mental. And then he goes and picks his dad up, right? Like want to show it off to his dad, like check this out. And they're driving around, and his dad doesn't say a single thing. And he's all like broken and busts up about it. And then he finally couldn't take it. He's like, Dad, what do you think? And he's like, I think the engine's running lean, son. And he's like, what? So they popped the hood. Dude, his dad was totally right. The whole time, half his engine was out. And I think that like the reason the analogy is I think a lot of times half our engine is out, but you just can't tell because you don't even know that the full capacity is there, and what we're using and believing works. It works in life. It gets us where we need to get, but it's not the design, and sonship is the design. So we get to this place, I'm God's son in that, but it's like, really, it's like, I'm his son, but if I don't suck it up and do this, I'm screwed. Or I'm his son, but if I don't make this happen. Does that make sense? That's the stuff for me that like,
it's all based on our perception of what son means to us.
Yeah.
And it's not like we go through life experiencing and doing through our lens of God until revelation comes and he says, nope, that's all wrong because this is me. Right.
That's right.
And so like that constant proving and that needing and wanting to rise above and showcase all that we are is for, you know, in some instances, unbeknownst to us, it's to prove to God that we are worthy of his love. When he's saying, no, you're not worthy. I love you anyway. It's like, I called you a son and I died for you because you weren't worthy. And now you are, because you've received the gift that I've given you. And that's all you need. And to let go of all of our perceptions let go of all of our perceptions of what we are supposed to do to rise up and to be a son in our eyes it takes radical revelation, because we're so twisted up. We're so twisted up in how life has formed ideas in our own brain and how we've reacted to those ideas and tried to overcome in our own life without looking to the Lord for all that. Right. And
that's good, man. So, and you know, I was thinking, Mario, when you're talking there too, just hit me of like, I think for each one of us, that statement you made about the worthy thing, I think it hits us on two directions. For some of us, like we don't feel worthy, and he's telling us like, you're totally worthy because I just picked you for you because I just love you. Yeah. But others of us, we actually have to grapple with that you're not worthy because you feel worthy. Like the whole ego kicks in on steroids.
You've made yourself.
You know what I mean?
It's like, I'm worthy because of this, right? So it's like this dichotomy of worthiness.
Right. Yeah.
Dang. So I was going to ask that question next, and you just answered it before I even asked it. I was going to ask about the tension between those two. And you just
that's funny. No, I think it's hard because that's a part of the trap. It's like you look at the other guys and it's like, don't you know you're worthy, but you feel worthy already. And so you're like, I don't have a problem with this, but your problem is actually you need to like not be worthy and like and like, you know what I mean? Which is like
absolutely
just tricky, dude.
This is something I wanted to mention on formation. And I was thinking about, as you were saying about like, am I worthy? And you're asking yourself these questions. I think about my children and my 5-year-old, my 3-year-old, obviously, because my 2-month-old doesn't speak other than some googly sounds here and there that are really sweet. But
that's a really nice way to talk about crying. So I'm pretty
but when my kids do something wrong, or when it's like they haven't even done anything wrong yet, but they're so sensitive that sometimes my kids, they'll do something and like maybe it wasn't like to their point, it's like, oh, maybe my dad or my mom doesn't approve of this, or I'm not sure. So what they'll do is they'll do whatever, and then like they'll talk to me, and at the very end, or sometimes they'll even ask me like before bed, they'll say, "Do you still love me?" And man, when they ask me that, I'm like crushed. I'm crushed because I'm sitting there. I'm like, what makes you think that I would not love you because of this like silly little thing that you did? And that's been really interesting because when I think about formation every night, like I put my kids to bed, and something that I've been doing is I've been asking them like, hey, like, do you know that like no matter how much good, I'm reading this book called Habits of the Household by Justin Earley. It's a really good book, highly recommended for people with families. But something that I adopted from that book is when I put them to bed, I tell them this narrative, and I always say, hey, do you know that I love you? And they go, yes, Dad. Like, my daughter's like 5, so she goes, yeah, Dad, I know.
Totally right. But, not this again.
Yeah,
Come on.
Exactly right. But it's like for them, it's like kind of lame. It's like okay, this again, like, you always do this. So I go like, do you know that I love you? And they go, yes. And then it's like my son can finish the sentence. Now he goes, yes, I know that you love me no matter if I do what? Good. And I go, yes, I love you no matter if you do good or what, Luca. And he goes, or bad. Right.
Yeah.
And then I pause and I go, and he goes, yes, who else loves me like that? Jesus. He goes, yes, I know who else loves me like that. God.
That's so good.
but it's been really formative to let him know that like, hey, like, it's just like when we give our kids a gift, right? Dude, you're getting this gift because you're my kid. Like you're not doing like, I want to give it to you because I know it's going to make you really happy. And I don't want anything in return other than you being really happy about it.
That's good. Yeah.
And just when you were talking about worthiness, that was just something that just came to mind. It's like, I don't want anything from you. And that's God's posture. It's like, he literally does not need us, but then created us and gave us life. And it's like, it's such a gift, to be able to, and it's like, I feel like that's been really formative for me now as an adult, as I'm trying to help my children with formation. I'm realizing that like everything that I try, it's like, obviously I slip back and forth, right? Because I've had that tension of maybe 5 years ago, I'm doing all this because I have to prove something. Whereas right now, it's like a lot of what I'm doing is just out of this place of overflow. And I really hope to be able to live in this space for a long, long time, because I know it's not always going to be this way. But it's like, I'm doing this because it's joyful. And man, it's like, it's really fun. And I know that God is doing something in it. And it brings blessing and it helps us serves others,
That's good, dude.
But I also know that it's because, I don't know if this connects, but it's because I know whose son I am. Like, it's like that has been concreted in my identity more than ever. And because of that, like, it's like, it like locks me in. But on the other side of that is that question of like, oh, am I worthy? It's like, that's the thing that we go back and forth subconsciously all the time. Like, oh, am I worthy? And then when you are, I feel like that's like the space that I'm in, is that overflow that you live in because you know that it's true. Yeah. It's the thing that I'm trying to get my kids to understand every night. It's like, hey man, I love you no matter if you do good or bad. Just like who else? God.
No, and actually, when you're sharing that story, there's just two things. It's like, one, laugh, because that whole classic, I think it's a perfect picture of good fatherhood, what you just shared, doing that with your kids at night. I feel like it's like good fatherhood in some ways is like doing the right thing for 20 years and just getting ridiculed for it. You know what I'm saying? Because it's like totally mocked, but then at the end of the day, when they look back, it's like the most formative thing, And it's funny because like, I think as a dad, you can see like, oh man, or even as a husband, or just in leadership in general, it's like, if we do this is the good thing, but people just like throw rocks at it so hard, not understanding its value, and like you got to pay a price for it on that. The other thing I was thinking on that same thing you're talking is like, when they do film, they ask you that question, then it breaks the heart, like how can we get there? Like, do you still love me in that? I actually feel like that is the condition of our heart naturally. And so I think that in the moments of failure where you really script, and this goes for adults to kids, I think that's actually where you have the biggest chance of experiencing his love and having a revelation. So the most biggest breakthroughs I've seen in people in sonship and just across the board is not moments of strength, but it's radical weakness. And when you do something really wrong, because it's like at that point, you're totally in the space where you don't deserve it and you're fully aware of it. Yeah. And then to experience it, it's like, I feel like revelation is almost like information experience, for lack of a better word, you know?
That's good.
And in those moments, it's like, boom. So I just like, I don't know. I'm like, frick, I need an Eric as a dad. You know what I mean? This is good. So
well, I mean, that's what I was going to actually
man.
correct. I was going to correct you on that. I was going to say, like, I try to do that every night, but there are many nights, more often than not, where it's like, man, it's 8:30, it's bedtime. And hey, I'm like, guys, it's 8:47. You're not laying down. And I'm like, it's like, I'll still do the habit of saying those things, but I'm like, guys, Daddy loves you no matter what. Like, no matter if you do good or bad. It's like I'm saying it like that now. You know, it's like, so it's like, because I'm like, dude, you guys are freaking going to sleep, man. Like,
totally.
Oh, you know, I'm frustrated, but
that's a kind of a good segue, because I wanted to invite TJ to talk a little bit about having sons, and how that has played into experientially being a son almost. And I know it's been a tough season, but
so for me, and I'll just be super transparent in this, I'm probably not, I think a little different. Sometimes I like waver on sharing some things and that for being misunderstood. So there's two sides to this for me. So like even like part of, for me, the sonship thing is like when you are a son growing up, you do have everything that you need in a sense, where you feel like that sense of affirmation or even opportunity. And so for me, like growing up, I didn't have tons of opportunities, whether it's like we were poor financially because my mom worked 2 jobs for welfare, or like just like all this skill set that you would get from a dad, like just didn't have any of those. So I like felt like a victim, where like I'm starting way behind everyone else and I have to double down and catch up. So I get like pissed about that. You know what I mean? So it's like I have to do 10 times more work on myself because of what should have just been given to me and wasn't given. So I had that whole dichotomy. So obviously I'm like hyper aware of that now for my kids. So one, it's like everyone talks about this, it's totally true. Like when you have your kids or your sons, you just love it in a different way. It's different than you love anything else. Matter of fact, it makes me more vulnerable. Like for the first time, I feel like to the extent of like, I can't fathom my son suffering, like physical pain if somebody was to harm him. I can't even wrap my head around that. Like I look at the pictures of stuff in Ukraine and these kids play. It just wrecks me in a way. And that's like when you really love deep, you're vulnerable in a way that's like that. And it's healthy, right? It's a good thing. So like, okay, I can connect that then. Like, well, I love my son is the way God loves to me. So obviously there's some deeper thing in there. But there's another part of me that kicks into in the sonship thing where it's like, and I think this might be unique to people that have a story like I have or other people, where it's like, it takes an incredible degree of selflessness to raise sons in a way where they feel like valued in that. And like if you do like fatherhood in the way that scripture talks about, even like being a husband, it's like laying down your life for your wife and then like laying into your family. Everything you hear like at night, it's like feeling all those tensions and like putting yourself on like, okay, I'll take the extra 20 minutes to do this with you. Even though that 20 minutes is probably the only 20 minutes I've had all day if I've been in the game. And my wife's probably going to talk after this too, which, honey, if you listen to this, I love that we talked for 20 minutes for the record. Just want to make sure that's officially what I said.
We'll get that cut out for you.
But no, you leave it in there. Just make sure that like the heart, just add a.
Oh no, I'm gonna get it. I'm gonna get it
matters.
cropped out and then play on a repeat.
Oh, I appreciate that. Yeah,
I got you, man.
I mean, if you just accidentally tag my wife, I won't stop you.
Yeah, no problem.
But the part of me struggles sometimes where it's like, frick, this is totally unfair. Am I growing up? I didn't get anything I needed, and now my whole adulthood is giving everybody else what they need. And I just like, you know what I mean? That thing pops up sometimes in there, but I'm like, it's pretty wild where like, that's why I think that like sonship with God is so critical, because if you can't see that, like, regardless if you didn't have what you need, he's going to be able to knock down any barrier for you going forward. He's going to be able to take care of you like that. And like, you're going to operate from a place of deficiency no matter what. I'm going to be such a good dad for my kids and do this. But like, if you're not loved, it's really hard to love. And if you don't feel free in that, where it's like, even now, it's like, if this isn't in place, if I'm not really a son or God's not really taking care of me, like I'm looking for my wife to give me stuff that I can only get from God. I'm looking for like my identity as a father. And then you're going to have a weird complex where how your sons do is a reflection of you. If they fail in life, then it means you're a bad dad, which it's like human nature. That could not be the case. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's just like all this stuff in there. So it's like, it's just interesting to me. Of like, I felt bankrupt growing up, and then God had to show me how much he can provide and take care of me. And I can feel bankrupt in giving to other people as well as sons. So it's like, I really doubled down on like, I'm going to give you everything I never had. And that's like my joy and pleasure, because people can get bitter. And if you get bitter, then you start saying things like, well, I never had this growing up either. And well, you know what I mean? And that whole mindset. But again, this is the whole thing of like, inside is the revelation of you're actually son and provided for there. Or are you the orphan, which is you're supposed to be a son, but you didn't have what you need and you've got to scrap to get it. And so that shows up now raising my boys all the time, where it's like, I do give them everything on that, but that orphan thing can still kind of come in where it's like, well, what about you, dude? You know what I mean? Like, nice for them, they get everything. I know this sounds so selfish, but that's the real thing that will kick in my heart. And so it's just like one of those, you scrapped for 20 years by yourself. Yeah. And that residue of that still lives there a little bit. And if you're not careful, you think that like, okay, now that I've left the stage where I'm no longer the son, but I'm like the father. It's like the stuff still is in there. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And it's that onion getting peeled back and working through that. So with my son, it's very easy now to like make sure that like the hits that I had, I don't give to him. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And that's because of all the work I did in like 15 years internally. However, if I didn't do work, ironically, you just would hurt him in the same way, but different. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's like, if you weren't provided for, you over provide, and then you overdo that, over protect, and then they're wounded because they don't get, it's just like, it's so ironic where it's like, so the sense being a dad is awesome. I love being a dad. I'm super excited. I've got like different things. I've tried to like start these journals from when my sons were born, that I just write them letters and I'm going to give it to them when they're 18. You know, they don't know about it like when they graduate. So each one of them will have that. And so it's just like moments over time and pictures and things. It's like, hey, this happened. And I saw a buddy do this. This wasn't my idea. And it was like, he was giving it to his son. Like, I'm like, that's freaking awesome. But like, think about all that stuff. And I read about it. And like, you know, I read like John Tyson's stuff on this and other things. It's just like, I think that's awesome. But even being a dad, there's still the holes inside that like just surface. I just think like, oh, dude. But you got to be loved and provided for first. And God already has done that and is doing that for you. But it's so much easier to love and provide for others when you feel like you're coming from a place versus like, I'm going to do this in a way that my dad never did, you know? Mm-hmm. Like, that's the wrong fuel.
It's interesting where that kind of reveals itself to in our day-to-day interactions with our kids, because there's this striking, you know, my dad was around, but he wasn't around growing up. And then parents had some issues, but then they got back together. So I had a like complicated, not as complicated as the two of you, but a very complicated emotionally relationship with my dad through my 20s. And it's interesting how the moments that reveals itself is when I'm disciplining my son, and the steps I take to discipline him and correct him and love him through him being a crazy kid, you know, but purposefully kind of responding in a way that I'm realizing as I'm doing it, responding in a way that, and there's multiple ways I respond, some mostly bad and some very good, but in the good times, I'm like loving my son through this process of correction.
Yeah.
And reinforcing my love for him through that, and walking him through the pain of correction. But at the end of it, always embracing him, because I never got, and realizing that as I walk from that experience, realizing that that wasn't my experience. Right.
Yeah.
But then I'm in the middle of my experience with my kid, and I'm just like firing off as my dad, and then, you know, beating myself up later about that whole thing. But,
totally.
you know, so
Totally.
it's really interesting where that reveals itself in our lives. Right.
Yeah, you have like the shadow version of you that still haunts you, but also like the redeemed version where you're like, holy crap, I'm like doing it and free. And they both show up at different times like that. Wild.
Yeah. It's pretty wild. Man, thank you so much. Look, we are like a little bit past time, but we have some kind of like fast track questions that we like to ask all our guests. But I appreciate you coming in, and TJ, and like sharing your story. And I'm sure we could probably go for another hour just talking about sonship and identity and
we got
fatherhood.
a whole other part on generational brokenness, man.
Yes. I think we need to do that.
That's
actually.
real. Yeah.
I think we need to do that.
No, you should. Like in guys, like how do you actually do it? You know what I mean?
How do you actually
Not
walk
just
through
like,
this?
Oh, that's big. I'd listen to that.
So, but we're gonna ask some core 5 questions. And Eric, I'm gonna start from the bottom, and we can end on the top. Why don't you start?
Cool. We'll start from the bottom.
Yeah.
Awesome, man. So we have our core 5 questions. We ask every guest this. And it's kind of how do you take care of this? So we have 5 pillars that we focus on. So how do you take care of your wallet or your finances?
Finances, basically, I just use like because I grew up like poor, it's kind of like having to bootstrap everything together, and even like I work in nonprofit world, so it's even harder on that. So I just use a lot of like the free spaces, like the mints and things, and I pretty much automate everything. We do like a lot of the miles and credit card, you know, some people aren't a fan of because it's Ramsey stuff, which is fine, but like I've never not made a payment in 12 years. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So in our household stuff, I basically try to run that and watch it, and my brain can kind of handle the little like crazy web. And then I'll put together a report for my wife once a month that kind of just like, here's where we are, here's what happened. She has access to everything the whole time. But that report actually is really helpful, that discipline, because it makes me like have to like
break down,
come up with like what did happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like, here's where we're at. And it's like, woo, man. So it's cool. So that's how we do that. But yeah,
you're like the financial manager of your household, kind of.
Yeah, I mean, manager might be a generous word, but yeah, totally. That's the
accountant. Okay. You just kind of like show where everything's going.
Yeah, dude, I would love. I mean, if you're open to it, I would love to see that, because I've been trying to figure out how to do that for my wife, because I do everything. I do like I automate all our bills, but I kind of sit down maybe quarterly or like semi biannual every 6 months, and go like, hey, this is kind of how we're spending. And I have a spreadsheet of like, if I die, this is what you need to do. But it's that's like, cool. but I don't know that it's helpful enough in helping us we make really good big decisions together. But on the month, like on month to month, I would, is that how you're doing it, month to month?
Yeah, every month. So when you do it,
I would love to see a little pie chart if you got one. Yeah.
I do it in different slide stuff, and then like she like mocks it, but then she's really grateful for it. So it's just one of those, like I just like.
DJ loves charts and like.
Oh yeah, dude, I love that stuff. So if you had something like that, it's like it doesn't.
I do it for her. I would like how I do it. So I just watch my wife. Yeah, I can. Throw
I would love that. Yeah.
All right. How do you? Question number 2. How do you take care of your soul or your spirit?
I mean, I got 2 little kids, so it's a little difficult right now. So the biggest thing I found is like I have to get up. I stupid early now. The only time I have for my own soul and spirit is before anybody else wakes up. It's never at the end of the day because I'm so toast. Yeah. So that means like 4:30 or 5, I got to get up right now. And then I'll do like, I'll try to like take like a quick little walk. So I'm always pissed in the morning a little bit. And so, but if I get outside and take a walk with God, I mean, it's just, that's real, right? It's just a gnarly season. But once I like get outside and take like a 15-minute walk, put a little worship in my ears, and like I've always been an outdoor person. This is just our complex. It's not even like a beautiful place. When I was younger, it's like go to the beach and go to the mountains, and now I'm like go to the parking lot. This is great, you know.
Be outside.
But, yeah, so there's 15 minutes, and then I will read the word. I read the word every day. Just take a second to journal in a really private room or when to find. And so about a half an hour. So I try to like, if I can get a half an hour, my soul's in business. If it's just me, Jesus, in that space. And ironically, the only time to do it is sacrifice sleep for it at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Eric.
Mindset. How do you take care of your mind?
Yeah, I think the first thing I just said just a minute ago is everything. So as soon as I can, it's like connecting to the Holy Spirit is everything, and Jesus and the Father. Like, it's kind of like I think I use it like an iPhone. Imagine you only charged your iPhone like once a week, you'd be screwed. So I just literally find that like John 15, if I don't connect in there, I'm living from my flesh pretty much all day. After that, the extra steps that are helpful, I meet with a group of guys, 2 guys. There was 3 guys. We've been meeting for like 10 years now, which is kind of like an awkward, like mandating to even build that. But I do that once a week. And then the other thing I do is I do a lot of reading. I have a huge commute, so I do some audiobooks. I do a lot of biographies. But you hear about other people's lives, it gives you so much perspective and really helps you put your stuff into proper. Like I'm just finishing this like 48-hour biography on Grant right now, which that guy's life sucked for a long time. I had no idea, you know? And just hearing, like, I do the long biographies because the short ones kind of just glamorize everyone's life, but I want to hear like the ugly failure part too. Yeah. So do that. And then that helps me a lot. So those are the 2 things. Like it's all from the morning though, because the day hijacks me. And then once I'm hijacked, it's like, I just need to go to sleep and start over because it's going downhill. You know what I mean? Like, and then fitness. The last thing I do is the CrossFit thing, and I pay for it now because I'm too busy in life. So to make sure I have to be there and someone else plan everything, I'm in a place where I have to make a lot of decisions for my family, for the church, for everything. But to be able to just show up, like I know enough about fitness, I could do it myself and blah, blah, blah. But I'm like, I'm overrun. So like doing that, and I do it before I go home, I show up with a blank slate. But otherwise, my mindset shows up at home and it's not good.
Yeah. That's been a huge shift for me too. My physical training is now hugely mental, whereas before it was physical training, which is really, really interesting. Just out of curiosity, so we shout them out. What gym or box do you train at?
Yeah, I train at CrossFit West Oahu right now, and I love it. A lot of boxes I've been doing all right. This box, I'm like the very bottom of the barrel. I love that. So I'm a competitor by nature, and so I'm like, this is great. You know, these guys are monsters. I'm like a
long way to go.
I like bring the average down, so it's good.
That was me a few months ago when I went back to CrossFit. I think the only thing that we've kind of covered it. Sure. You know, our last question was physical, and you answered that, but heart and like seat of emotions and kind of like, and I know it's all, you know, like soul, mind, and heart, and you know, emotions are all kind of like wrapped up.
Different definitions.
Is there something that you kind of point to that kind of you take care of that part of your life?
Yeah, so I think the little stuff is like the maintenance thing. I think like Sabbath is a critical concept nowadays. And even in Sabbath with family can be hard because different wirings. Like my wife is wired like when my family's together, I'm like alive. And for me, I'm like, this sounds terrible, but I just need a break even from like family a little bit, which sounds like, dude, you suck as a man and a person and a pastor and everything. You suck. But I like, so on that thing, like on Sabbath day, like we'll do this thing, like I'll light a candle with my son. My son loves it. So we light it and we just know, okay, we're starting Sabbath today. And I picked this up from, might have been John Mark's book or other guys I heard talk about this. Yeah. And then we'll eat real good food and take a nap or sleep early. I'll go to bed early that night. And then on the day I can get like maybe 2 or 3 hours. I get to do whatever I want. And I just pick something, whatever that one thing is. And it's sometimes like, I'm going to go and like, we can't barbecue at our house, do a little townhouse, but I found out I can do it like my parking stall. And so like, she's like, you want to go sit in your parking stall by yourself and cook on a little tiny grill? I'm like, yeah, that sounds amazing. So whatever it is, I don't care how dumb it sounds, but like I do that stuff and I just make sure to not do like the numbing stuff. So it's like, gotta be filling and not the numbing. Cause it's like, it takes care of your heart. Like, the numbing stuff is like, oh, I binge something on Netflix. And then it's like, that doesn't take care of my heart. It numbs. Or, you know what I mean? And it's like, if I don't do one thing that like, I really love this. like my heart just slowly like wanes. And then I feel like I'm leading, I'm dadding, I'm doing all of it from obligation and not out of like my person. So Sabbath for me, I just treat it like I just say no to everything. And then it'd be nice if I had all day. And if you're out there and you get all day, I'm so jealous. And just, if I ever meet you, just lie to me and tell me you don't have all day. But I like look for 2 to 3 hours once a week, mutually agreed upon a family thing. I don't got to do kids' space with me. I don't got to tuck them on my hip, whatever it is. And then just give myself permission. Like in the pandemic, I got into something stupid like disc golf. Like it's so weird, but it was like I was locked away. There's nothing else. So then I'm like, are you really going to be a grown man and go play disc golf? That's so lame. And I'm like, this age, I'm like, I don't care. And if I have fun doing it, I do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like one thing, but like my son will play, but I don't take him on that because it's like, I can take him and it's good for him. But like at some point I got to take care of my own heart. Yeah. So that's how I do it. 2 to 3 hours is my realistic, and then plan it in advance because when I get there, I'm too tired. I'm too this, and my emotions are going to lie to me. And I just found like, the whole, I believe there we have an enemy in that. I just feel like that's the day he assaults the most. That's the time if Jules and I will get in a fight, it's going to be then. It's going to be like, you should be like a better person and just sacrifice. And like every time I do it, it ends up being like your heart's dying. And if your heart's dead, this is going to get way harder.
Absolutely. Oh man, so good. TJ, I just want to hang out
Cool.
more now.
No. We can go to Ohio, so it'll be great.
We'll go to Ohio together and explore it for the first time.
Yeah, that's exactly. I'll show you around.
All right, man. Well, we appreciate you being here, man. And
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
that's it.
Love what you guys are doing. Cool.
Thanks for joining us today, guys. For more content, you can find us on Instagram at WeTheTrust or at WeTheTrust.com. If you'd like to connect further with Eric, you can find him on Instagram at Coach Eric Freedom. And if you'd like to connect further with me, Mario, you can find me on Instagram at the Mario Quesada. We'll see you next time.